Throughout the Souls series, there's tons of bosses known for being great and others not so much. And in today's video, I'm going to be telling you my opinions / showing you which are the worst and best bosses throughout the Souls games. Before we get into the video, if you're new, make sure to like and subscribe. I think the worst boss in DSR is not Pinwheel or the Bed of Chaos. I think it's actually the Stray Demon. There's 3 copy and paste of these bosses, the Asylum Demon and the Fire one. I think the Fire one does it better, and the Asylum Demon's a tutorial, so it kind of teaches you what to do. And so I think the Stray Demon is just kind of boring. I think there could have been a lot of opportunities to make him a better boss fight, but they kind of just had a copy and paste of the other boss fights. So that's why, for me personally, he's at the bottom of the list. For the 2 best bosses of Dark Souls Remastered, I was kind of debating between Ornstein Smough or Artorias. But I think you have to give it to Ornstein Smough because I think everything Artorias does, Ornstein Smough basically do better. I think Ornstein Smough is a harder fight, but all for the good reasons. Because you have to fight 2 enemies at the same time, but it's not like you're getting gangbanged or anything. I also like that fight because the 2-on-1 also makes you have to have a plan when you come in there, and you have to have a plan on who to kill first, because depending on that, the second phase will be different, and I don't think any other boss in Dark Souls Remastered does it like that. Now for the worst boss of DS2, this was kind of a tricky one because there's a lot, and I mean a lot of bad bosses in DS2. Now for DS2, you might think the most annoying and worst boss is the Royal Rat Authority or the Poison DLC's 3-person Bukkake boss fight. Now there's a lot of horrible gank boss fights in Dark Souls 2, but I don't think any of those boss fights are the worst in the game, not even the Bell Gargoyles. But in my opinion, I think the Ancient Dragon is by far is an overstatement, but I think he is the worst boss in DS2. Not only because he's mandatory unlike the others, but also it's super repetitive, and if you die, it's a long way up there. And this fight is hard for all the bad reasons. He does tons of damage, he has tons of health, but it's not like he has any cool moves you have to fight or anything like that. You run up to him, you hit his toes, he flies in the air to shoot fire, you run away, you run back, you repeat the process for about 20 minutes. And if you die, you have to do that whole 20-minute process over and over again. Now for the best boss in DS2, this is actually surprisingly hard because there are surprisingly tons of great bosses in DS2 like the Looking Glass Knight, the Fume Knight, Velstadt, Dark Lurker, Smelter Demon. And the only reason I'm going to automatically exclude Smelter Demon, the blue one, is because there's a copy on the old one, and I'm going to exclude Ivory Knight, which is a great boss fight just because of that whole 20 minutes of farming his enemies shit. So with all that yapping, I think the Looking Glass Knight is the best knight in DS2. But I do think the Fume Knight and the Dark Lurker are right behind him. Now, I think the Looking Glass Knight is a great fight, not just because of the atmosphere that you're fighting on top of Dragon Lake while it's raining and while he uses lightning, which is obviously very visually pleasing, but this boss has a very unique and diverse moveset compared to much of the bosses in DS2. If you're close, he has nice close attacks. If you run away to heal, he'll throw lightning at you. He can jump at you at mid-range. And I also think this is a pretty hard boss fight. I think it's underrated on difficulty. But I do think it can be a little bit harder, and the last great thing about this boss fight is how we can summon in Black Phantoms in the middle of the fight. And also, if you put your red sign down near that boss wall, there is a chance that he can summon you to fight another player online, which I think is a very unique and great feature to a boss fight that I think needs to be utilized more. Now for the worst boss in DS3, I decided not to go with the giant wyvern and they do all that parkour through, because I think a boss like that every now and then is kind of refreshing and nice, but I did decide to go with Aldrich the Devourer of Gods. Now this boss does have a couple of cool ideas, like how he steals the gods' moves, like that scythe and the raining spears or whatever it's called, but this boss is just so forgettable and what I've heard repetitive. I've fought this boss 2 times and I can't remember one single thing from this boss fight. I had to look up a video about him, and what I'm seeing is repetitive, annoying. If you go up to him close, he AoEs, and if you go far away, he spams spells at you. Now for Dark Souls 3, I'd like to give an honorable mention for the best boss being Gale, because he's such a hard and fun fight with so many things going on. It's got a great atmosphere that makes you scared, but I don't think he's quite frankly the #1 boss. I think the #1 boss of DS3 is the Lothric twin brothers. I think the run up to the boss fight is really cool, and the boss arena is also really cool, and it it feels like a very cinematic boss fight. The first phase, how we can teleport back and forth, which you still can do in the second phase, is super cool. It's super scary, but it's also super fun too. I also think this boss is very hard, but also for the right reasons. And especially in the second phase, when the other brother is on his back, and even if you kill the bigger or the stronger one, it doesn't matter, you have to kill the one on the back, which I think is a great addition, because it kind of makes you think and plan ahead, and not just run in there and hit. I also feel like the boss Pontiff Sullivan deserves an honorable mention, because I think he's a really underrated and fun boss fight, especially in the second phase, where he throws around a clone, which at first can be very intimidating, but as you learn how it works, it kind of helps you out, predicting his moves. Now for the worst boss of Sekiro, I think it's very different, because in the other games, you kind of hate gimmick bosses and stealth bosses, but in this game, that's kind of sort of a premises, like the snake boss and the monkey boss. But I personally think the worst boss of Sekiro is the monkey gangbang, where you fight the guardian ape without a head and his wife without a head. I think this boss isn't even that bad compared to some of the other Souls games' worst bosses, but Sekiro has great bosses, and I think this fight, as I said before, I'm not a fan of getting bukaki'd on, so I don't really enjoy it that much. Now this fight does kind of give a good job of striking fear and giving atmosphere, but it's not even that hard of a boss. The first 2 tries, you get absolutely raped, but then after that, it's kind of like a given boss. You kind of just know what to do. It's pretty easy. In my personal opinion, I think the best boss of Sekiro is the Genichiro you fight towards the beginning of the game at that snowy castle area. Now this might seem like a crazy answer, but I feel like this is one of the more visually pleasing boss fights. It's also got a great arena, and I think it plays out really well. But I guess you could also say the last boss and the Owl Father look just as good and play just as well. But I think this boss's hardness is justified, and it feels fair, and it feels fun when you die. But I feel like the last boss is kind of stressful, and it feels a little bit unfair sometimes when you die. I also think a good reason for explaining why this boss isn't that hard is because he's kind of like a tutorial boss, so he also teaches you things as well as it being semi-challenging and fun. So for Elden Ring, I'm choosing the main bosses like the demigods or the mandatory ones because there's a million of those mini bosses. I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to you, but I'm choosing the Foreskin duo. Now this boss, not only is it very, very hard for the wrong reasons, it's also unfun and just feels blatantly unfair sometimes. Not only is it 2-on-1, they revive each other several times, and while one rolls up on you, the other spams spells at you from far away. And I mean, that's about it for this boss fight. Now for the main boss of Elden Ring, I think this was a really tough one. It was kind of tied down between Malekith, Malenia, and Dragonlord Placidus. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the Dragonlord, because I feel like it's so much of a fun fight. The atmosphere is great, the arena is by far the coolest looking, and the boss is by far the coolest looking. He has great moves, that it's very diverse, it's very fun, and it's very hard. And some of his moves, when he teleports in the sky and disappears and fades in, that's a super cool move that changes the whole fight for you. Just makes you think of it so differently, and makes you kind of scared of him too. Thank you guys so much for watching.